Welcome back, everyone. As I mentioned before our break, Shannon and I will be answering listener questions. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Sally. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
Good, good. All right, so let's dive in. We got a lot of listener questions, and there's some pretty thorny ones too. So
There are. It's our lucky day.
yes, indeed, exactly.
All right, so this first question comes in from Heba, I believe it's pronounced, came in through our Facebook page. So just a reminder to folks, if you do have any questions, feel free to just send us a message on Facebook and we'll try to get to them on the show. But Heba says, hello, I hope you are doing well. Thank you, same to you. I would love to ask some questions related to getting into the Ivy League or MIT.
Oh, that's easy.
Right. We can help with that for sure.
Yeah.
No problem. Personally, I'm interested in medical studies and I would love to get into Harvard Medical School. Again, a challenging task, but we'll see what we can do here. Now, the thing is that I'm still a high school student. I'm a senior next year, which means that I'll graduate with the 2021 class. I study in Morocco, and the educational system is mainly similar to the French one, but kind of different compared to the one in the US. I would like to know how a foreign student can apply to such universities, and if I should take any exams or tests to evaluate my level before getting into college. Thank you in advance. Take care and stay safe. Again, same to you, Heba. And I don't know if we've had a question from Morocco before. This is
Yeah,
exciting.
I don't think we have. I mean, the good news is that American universities are very used to the French system, to the baccalaureate system. So if it's the same basic system, they're going to be familiar with it, even if they haven't already had applications from Morocco, which frankly would be surprising. I mean, I think there's applications from most countries. When I worked at, Reed College and Whittier College, which are not as well known, we still had applications from all over the world. So I wouldn't worry too much about your system, about it being known. Now, in terms of general advice, I did want to mention also that we had a show on February 26th, 2020 that was all about applying to the US as an international student. So do want to point you to that because you're going to get a more in-depth answer. But in terms of the tests, do try and take the SAT or ACT and SAT subject test. In a normal year, I would say you must take the SAT subject test and the SAT. I still think a lot of the schools and we're going to be getting into COVID-19 more soon, but a lot of those schools have gone testing optional. Schools like I think Harvard and Yale, I mean, a lot of the most selective colleges. That being said, I think it's going to be, I don't know, they're generally speaking, they're not as comfortable with international students going test optional is what I've noticed. So if at all possible, you need to try and take at least the SAT or the ACT. And then ideally, again, if possible, if it isn't, it isn't. Try and take SAT subject tests. You're going to need at least 2, and take them in the subjects that you're strongest in, like where you're going to be taking your IB exam is probably going to be ideal places. And you can go to the collegeboard.org to look up those exams. I want to stress though, too, this isn't your question, but I want to back up and address the assumption that to get into Harvard Medical School, you have to go to Harvard undergrad or an Ivy undergrad or MIT. That is 100% not the case. I have sent students who've gone to schools that are at the most selective level. I have sent students to schools that were far less selective, and at all different levels, you see students getting into those top medical schools. A student of mine who actually went to Yale, then from there went on to Stanford Medical School. I was very happy for her. I looked at the announcement and it showed all the other members of her class, and there were multiple students who had gone to Arizona State, which I thought was great. Now, Arizona State has a top-notch honors college. I'm 100% positive that those students were in the honors college, but it's not, even the honors college is not Harvard. But what happened is that those students went to that school that is not as selective and really distinguish themselves. So that's what really matters. Certainly, go to a school where you will distinguish yourself, do research as an undergraduate, Make sure they have a good pre-med advising committee, but don't worry about going to a big name if you want to go to a top medical school. You just need to go distinguish yourself wherever you are. So I just really want to push back on that assumption. The other thing I'd say, by the way, though, is that there's also other good medical schools beyond Harvard Medical School. It's okay if you want to have that as your goal, but I would really broaden things out a lot. I think that's
Yeah.
going to be the best idea.
I had the same thought, wondering maybe Heba has done his or her research, very well and decided that these are the best schools for him. But I wonder if it's just because these are the most well-known schools that are known worldwide, and he may not be as familiar with some of the less brand name schools here in the U.S. that could also do a fabulous job of educating.
Exactly. Like University of Pittsburgh Medical School, top notch. Just throwing that out there as one example. Maybe not everybody's heard of it, but it's a great place.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead and ask your question now. Okay. This is from Jonathan, and he writes, "Love your podcast." Thank you, Jonathan. We fall in the middle. While we won't qualify for financial aid because we live in New York City, we will need unsubsidized student and Parent Plus loans to pay for college. So does that mean we say no to financial aid on the application, but fill out the FAFSA for aid deadline or after acceptance? So I guess, do you fill it out on time or?
Yeah. I think that's the question. Yeah. So I would say, I think that you're right, Jonathan, that you should say on the admissions application that you are not applying for financial aid. The loan programs you mentioned aren't really financial aid. They're more like financing options. They're not need-based aid programs. So I think it's perfectly legitimate that you say, no, I'm not applying for financial aid on the admissions application. And then in terms of the timing of when to do the FAFSA, I think the safest bet, assuming you are confident that you will not qualify for any need-based aid, is in fact to wait until you've already been accepted to the school. And there's a lot of caveats here. So first of all, before making that decision, number one, fill out net price calculators on all the websites of all the schools you're considering to confirm that you won't qualify for need-based financial aid. Because if you will qualify for need-based aid, you want to apply on time for sure. The other thing you'd want to check is if any of the colleges your child is applying to requires the FAFSA be considered for any merit scholarships. It's a pretty rare policy, but there are some schools that do. So again, if it's needed for merit scholarships, you want to apply on time. So assuming you've checked those two things off the list, the FAFSA isn't needed for merit, you're really not going to qualify for need-based aid. Then the issue, and why I'm saying you might want to wait till later on in the process, is if a college practices need-aware admissions. That's kind of the question that I think Jonathan is leading to. I think Jonathan is one of our regular listeners, and I think that he's aware of the fact that colleges can be need blind, where they won't take into account the fact that you may or may not need financial aid when they're making their admissions decisions, or they could be need aware, where they reserve the right to do so. And the fact that you're applying for financial aid could, at some need aware schools, in some circumstances, hurt your admissions applications. So for that reason, I'm saying you maybe want to wait till you've already been accepted. Now, it could be at many schools, it would be just fine to just apply for admission saying you're not applying for financial aid, check that box, go ahead and submit the FAFSA, and you're still fine in terms of their need-aware admissions process. They're just looking at that checkbox. At other schools, and I've heard this advice before, I think I've probably given this advice in the past, you can check off not applying for financial aid, file the FAFSA, and then just send it like an email in saying, just so you know, I just filed the FAFSA to get these loans. And I probably should have mentioned that earlier. The FAFSA is required to get the couple of non-need-based loans he mentioned. So that's why there's any issue at all. And that is probably fine at most, even need-aware schools. If you send that email in, they know for sure you're not looking for their institutional aid. And so again, you're fine in their need-aware admissions process. You're considered a full-pay student. So doing either of those things is probably fine at most places, but I've just kind of done this enough and talked to, all of our colleagues at College Coach who have worked at dozens and dozens of colleges across the country. I know enough now to know that every school does it a little bit differently and looks at different things. And there may be some schools where even if you check the right box and even if you send in an email, maybe just by filing the FAFSA, that puts you into that category, that puts you at a disadvantage at some need-aware schools. So I think kind of the most conservative, safest option, if you're worried, if you're applying to need-aware schools and you're worried about this aid application hurting you, check off saying that you're not applying for aid and don't file the FAFSA until you've already been accepted. So you know for sure that it won't hurt you. The unsubsidized direct loan, the direct plus loan are loans that do not require you to be on time. It's basically unlimited money. It never runs out. You could apply, halfway through the school year and still get those loans. So you don't have to worry about being on time for those particular non-need-based loan programs. Again, though, if you might qualify for aid, if it's required for merit, though, then make sure you do the FAFSA on time, come what may in terms of the admissions process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really, really do want to stress, because I've run into so many myths that
yes.
If a school says they're need blind, they're need blind.
They're need blind.
I worked at Chicago. We were need blind. Like, we didn't care. In fact, we had enough money that we were like, oh, good, it's a full needs student. I mean, it was like
someone to spend our money on. Yeah.
Socioeconomic diversity, So don't mind. Okay, now I can see people going like, well, should we apply for aid? Like, to make it seem
right.
like if we're adding diversity. Please don't do that. But I'm just saying, if the school says they're need blind, then you can trust them and submit that application. If they don't say that, or they hem and haw, absolutely follow Shannon's advice.
Right, exactly.
Especially if all you need is loans. If you want
excellent point, Sally. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so you can find, I would check the school's websites, all the schools that your child is going to apply to, and if they say need blind, exactly like Sally said, they are need blind, so don't worry about it. But if you find them not saying that they're need blind, that probably means they're need aware. And that's when you may have the issue. Okay, Sally, so the next question for you comes from Christine, submitted through our Instagram page. So we have a brand new, about a year-old Instagram account. So if you're not following us yet, at College Coach BH, make sure you follow us and you can send us questions there. But Christine asks, with all of the uncertainty nowadays, will early action and early decision be even more valuable this year? What about applying early decision to a highly selective school that has gone test optional for 2021 with no test score if you have a high GPA? A lot going on there.
Yeah, no, exactly. So first of all, honestly, the question is, we just don't know for sure yet. I mean, in general, I think applying early decision and early action is going to be valuable, and you can anticipate that it will continue to be valuable in terms of giving you a boost to get in. But, colleges don't know the answers to these questions yet either. So this is what's very hard. With Corona, colleges don't know if they're going to be in person. They don't know how many students are going to apply. They've got students taking leave, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, in general, I think early decision probably might be even a little bit more helpful. I don't want you to overstate that though. I mean, I noticed that the second part is applying ED to a highly selective that has gone test optional with no test score. If you have a GPA, I want to be clear that even now, Harvard is not going to be taking a 3.5. Like it doesn't, like these highly selective schools tend to be the schools that have enough money to get through this, right? So early decision is actually going to make a much bigger difference at a school that is more tuition driven, which does not include the Ivies, which are largely not tuition driven. I think none of them are at this point. I think maybe a few of them were when I started in admissions, a little bit more so. So don't I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, and I know that's what I'm doing, but don't get your hopes up and say, this is the year I'm going to get into Stanford. Because that being said, if you are a very strong student, this is the year some of these schools are test optional. However, I want to be clear, it's not enough to have a high GPA. Like, I'd recommend going back and kind of listening to our shows there too. You have to have taken the most rigorous curriculum. You have to have the best grades in those. You have to have really exceptional extracurricular accomplishments. The demands there, I think, are going to be a little lower this year because a lot of students would have been doing some pretty cool things over the summer. And,
Yeah.
you know, let's face it, a lot of plans were shut down. But in general, you still are going to have to be truly exceptional. One of the things that I tell to students is look around at your high school. If you go to just a typical good high school, are you not only at the top of your class in terms of GPA, but really kind of exceptional in terms of the accomplishments that you have? If you can't honestly say that, if you're honestly kind of thinking, I'm in the top 10%, I'm strong, but I'm not like exceptional within my high school, then these colleges are still going to be a reach. Like not just a reach, but really highly unlikely. However, if you really are exceptional within your high school, you're one of those students where everybody's like, wow, this kid is amazing. Like, how do you do it all? Then, you know, if the only thing holding you back is a test score, then this might actually be your year. Like that actually might be the case.
Yeah.
So, but keep in mind that no test score doesn't mean it's going to be easier to get in. It just means there's going to be even more focus on the
Right.
other academic elements of the application.
Right.
So if you take an exam and you do well in it, it is absolutely going to be to your advantage to submit it. And I can't stress that enough. So.
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll do one more question before the break.
Okay.
Okay, so this is from Carrie. My son received a number of financial aid offers, but was not awarded any financial aid besides a small student loan. We don't want to take on any debt for college. Do we have any other options?
Yeah, so this is a situation where I wish I had a whole lot more info from Carrie, but essentially, if you didn't receive financial aid, you don't want to take on student loans, essentially means paying out of pocket for the most part. So do you have that money? Can you look at what do you have in savings? Can you stretch that out? Might you be able to pay on a monthly payment plan to the school that most colleges do in fact offer? So take a look at your monthly budget, figure out if you can budget to pay the tuition bill that way. You can in fact ask for more financial aid. So you can appeal to the financial aid office, say, I'm not sure if I can swing this, explain any special circumstances you have, ask them for more. Schools have been more forthcoming throughout this kind of spring with more money because of all the uncertainty, I think, trying to fill their classes. I don't think that will last forever, but it never hurts to ask. So you could ask for more aid.
Mm-hmm.
There are outside scholarships you could apply for, check in with your school guidance counseling website that might list local scholarships. Scholarships.com is a good web search. Those, you can't count on those private scholarships for tons of money though. So I think it's essentially, for the most part, looking at your budget, looking at your savings, your cash flow, seeing if you can swing things on a payment plan. The other thing I'll just say very briefly, that the CARES Act did provide new flexibilities with tapping into a 401k. For this year, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. In all likelihood, you're going to need that money for your retirement. I would not tap it to pay for college, except in very, very rare circumstances where you've overfunded your retirement accounts. So it's essentially looking at your budget, figuring out if you can swing it. And of course, if this particular school your child wants to attend does not fit within that budget and you don't want to borrow, of course, it's looking at less expensive options, and that might be the local community college for a couple of years. It might be, if the school you're wanting is a private school, maybe looking at the four-year public school. So there are certainly options, but it's just kind of taking a look at your budget and figuring out what you can swing there. You might be able to appeal for a little more aid, maybe pull in a couple private scholarships, but they're not going to make a huge difference in all likelihood.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, Shannon and I will be answering more questions.